I'll convene the special board meeting of November 17th. This board meeting is called to address a single item, Scott's Flat Security Gate. Because it's a special board meeting, I assume that's the reason there's not public comment or anything else on the agenda. And so we will not take any public comment at this time. We will take public comment on the item that's on the agenda. So you can certainly speak to the Scott's Flat Gate issue, but this is not a time to address other items that are not on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's our attorney speaking to that issue. So, Greg, please.
Will do. Good morning and welcome. Board staff, members of the public, thanks for coming this morning on a Friday. So today, I want to provide direction regarding the Scott's Flat Spillway Gate and authorize the general manager to execute the necessary budget amendments or adjustments and contract documents.
Okay. Why don't you hold for a second while Director Miller makes his way.
Special. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Greg Jones, Assistant General Manager.
Good morning.
Potential options have been identified to help mitigate the health and safety associated with the public access on top of and across the Scott's Flat Spillway, including roughly 5 items that were identified and are in the board packet. One is a fencing along the top of the spillway to run parallel with the eastern and western edges, including adding wing walls to the northern and southern access points of the spillway, including kind of the same no-climb fencing type and razor wire on the top as what is currently there on the fence on the upstream side currently. Number 2, to install, that estimated cost is roughly $48,000 to do, and we estimate that supporting contracts, etc., that'll take about a month to finalize and get installed. Installing cameras, number 2, installing cameras at various locations in order for NID to access real-time monitoring of the facility is another option on the table. The cost of $126,000 includes purchase and installation of those cameras, the trenching conduit necessary to get those cameras up and running, and labor. And we estimate that would take about a 5 to 6 month time period from start to finish, a full installation. Third item for the board to consider are installation of signage along the area, roughly small signs indicating no jumping, no loitering, no etc. In the area. That's roughly a couple weeks to order up and install, and that's roughly $1,000 cost. Fourth item is actually hiring a security to patrol the campgrounds and spillway throughout the time, and that can take a couple weeks to go through a security company locally and hire out. And that's roughly about a $20,000 cost for 6 to 8 months of time out there.
And during that 6 to 8 month period, Greg, how often are they there?
That would be they would be in and around Camp 1 and the Scott's Flat. It would be general around Scott's Flat, Gate 1 and 2, mostly for the summer months. Not necessarily, we're not thinking that would be a winter activity.
All right.
So it would be in addition to ongoing security throughout Scott's Flat campgrounds as well. The fifth item actually was on an option to close the gate at different times regarding some interest in the past, and the gate. So the option to close the gate may be also based upon Homeland Security, which is their National Terrorism Advisory System. System has been updated since information has been included in the board packet. That was 2011 color-coded process, and it's been updated since then to reflect a different terrorism threat system, which includes sort of a bulletin and an advisory on elevated intimate threats. So regardless, the thought is to monitor the Homeland Security processes in real time, which we currently do anyway. Our hydroelectric department manager and operations are monitoring that on a daily basis. And so we do have access to that currently and have been doing it. The information in the board packet was just outdated, and I apologize for that. These are the options presented to the board to consider on giving an immediate opening to specified date, and I'll take any questions.
Security would be benefited or unbenefited position?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that?
Security would be a benefited or unbenefited position?
No, it wouldn't be an employee. It would be a
Subcontractor?
Yeah, a subcontractor.
So it
Yeah,
defines liability on that?
that's right.
Okay.
John?
Well, I'm interested to hear what the APC discussed.
I don't think this was discussed in APC.
Oh,
I apologize.
This came through
before
who?
The board is a special meeting from the WHO.
So I sit on the WHO, and this is
Oh,
us
okay.
trying to
All right.
make the compromise of locking them open
All right.
and closing it based on some criteria with regards to terrorism. The rest is taken from public input to
That is
a large degree.
as well as staff discussions adjourned.
We were trying to figure out a way to appease everybody and yet fulfill our responsibility. It was a task that was ill-defined to us to tidy it up, so to speak, and but doesn't mean we've got to keep it locked all the time.
One thing I failed to mention was the fact that this is it's potentially a temporary opportunity. The district is perhaps there may be some direction from DSOD in the future on completely redoing the spillway. We don't know that for a fact right now, but we anticipate this to be a roughly temporary opportunity or option. Temporary being, I'm not sure how long that is, but we definitely want to engage with community members on identifying different, a long-term permanent solution to ways around that the lake.
Which at the committee, we brought up a trail that would cross 150 yards, 150 feet downstream,
Downstream.
150 yards, 150 feet.
Probably yards.
Probably yards.
It would need to be
Further
It would need to be
defined.
further-
150 feet would clear right through the power plant.
The temporariness of this is that if we can
Details.
achieve another crossing for everybody, that's fine too.
Got
But
it.
all the above.
Good.
If we choose option number 3, with installing signage, the existing fencing and stuff that kind of precludes folks from going right or left off of the trail would remain?
The
Yeah.
picture of the expanded paper is in the packet. Doesn't-
Right, there is.
Yeah, I can hardly tell by looking at that what it's going to be.
Yeah,
The red.
we're not anticipating removing any of the fencing that's currently in existence.
But adding a downstream fence as well, so
Right.
people couldn't fall off and fall under the concrete.
That's your direction.
I think I'll go right across. Will, and then Nancy.
Nancy gets first. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, you go.
You sit in that chair, I sit in this one.
But Nance, they called for, you sit on the WHO. I mean, John was saying, what did we come up with at WHO
Yeah.
committee? I mean,
Okay, well, while you're getting in a dialogue here, I'm with you. It would have been helpful to have the APC minutes in this meeting. So some board members don't have full knowledge. Nick came as an observer.
What are the APC
I'm
minutes?
sorry,
You
not
mean the who?
APC. Who?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Nick came as an observer for the last meeting, but there's a lot of
That's two
information that
meetings.
isn't in here. So my concern today is that we have the issue of being able to protect our facilities and to protect NID from liability, and that's very important. And we have a community that is asking for access, and one that they've had for quite a while. And so when I look at the staff report, I'm to look at these options 1 through 5, which are all infrastructure stuff. I understand that DSOD is requiring the first one, the fencing. Some of these others are options that NID has. But the issue here is not just this monetary. The issue is, are we responsive to the community? Are we willing to cooperate and do what we can and still keep NID safe? And so the orientation to voting on a monetary thing, that would be normally just part of procedure. We have done God knows how much money for the hydro department. So the fencing on top of the dam seems to be part of that. Why would we not have had cameras and guards before? Because it's not a new problem, but that's kind of a deep issue. So let's talk about, as a board, where we are, before we vote on this, where we are with access for the community.
Well, my proposal continues to be lock them open, so they have access, everybody has access, without keypad or elitist or, actually my boys last night in the car went, Dad, you should make $50 on it. I go, that doesn't, I mean, not me personally, but the district. And I understand that, but it just seems like then finances, so if it's open, it's open, if it's not, it's not. And that's trying to put it to some criteria, which would be rare. I mean, the idea being, it's only when we go into some high category of closing the gate. So, again,
Thank you.
that's,
Thank you.
Locking the gates open now still allows us to pursue any of the remaining options as time progresses. And between now and sometime, there might even be other options that present themselves that we can consider. So I'd say lock the gates open, put up appropriate signage, let everybody know that that signage is important, and to take an active role in trying to themselves in trying to protect the facility. There's $50 million worth of infrastructure down there.
Or more.
Or more.
Well,
Yeah.
And then we're done.
There's two things. First off, I wanted to ask if Nancy had mentioned that option one, that the fencing was required by DSOD. Did you mention that?
DSOD did not specify, Keen, I've been at all these meetings. Right. You were at one, Nick's been at both, Nancy and I have been charged with trying to figure this all out.
They aren't requiring that.
Keen reiterated the letter to Ricky the other night, one more time. I mean, I've heard it a bunch of times. They were just told you need to secure your facility. They did not specify how, what, or it was an ill-defined, fix it. So it was not a spelling out of offense, no.
right. And so one reaction to that, of course, is to put up a gate. That achieves the direction.
Keen was trying to be.
So I see this, there's actually two issues here. One of them is the DSOD requirements of the dam, and there's also the requirements to protect the public, which is why the fence was put up initially, because it was somewhat of an attractive nuisance, people jumping off. It was a danger. Right now that that's taken care of, I don't know that there's actually a danger to the public itself. The dam is a dangerous facility. So I don't know that a fence should be put in the other way unless we think that, there's quite a bit of drop on the dry side there. So if that is seen to be a danger, then perhaps we need that. But if we find that we don't need that fence over there, I would suggest that John had is initially put signage. And put signage that people actually adhere to, because that is clear and precise. And perhaps the community can participate in that and notifying us when there is people that are milling about on there. I think we could open it. It seems like there's quite a demand to open it. But I think, some really specific signage on there that something's going to happen if you do something that's a danger to either yourself or others, or that you're causing danger to the facility. Right now, there is signage there. It says keep out. And so it is a bit odd to me that it says keep out and people are allowed to go over there now, I mean, constantly. And it says no trespassing on there. Maybe the signage needs to be more prevalent.
And more specific.
A warning, not just, and then open it, because it looks like that no one really has been hurt. It doesn't seem like. That there is some complaints, though, about people jumping off, like I said earlier, and that's been alleviated. So the other question, like I said earlier, is do we need a fence on the other side? There's a significant drop. It's about 3 or 4 stories down. I wonder if that could be made a little less dangerous. People can climb on that thing. And no one has done, but I mean, you go by every overpass around here and there's no fencing there and people are not falling off those. I guess I'm kind of in the air about whether to put a fence on the other side or not, but initially what I would think is to install signage and open the gate and until we can find a more permanent solution down the road of another trail below.
Well, in addition to the no trespassing sign, there's a sign that says pack it in, pack it out, something to that effect. So it's a little misleading if you can't trespass, but if you're going to take stuff in and you've got to take it out, that's no bigger problem.
To be clear, I believe the gentleman that told us about that sign, it was up, haven't really been out there, but it was up at the parking lot or something or wherever you get off at Cascade Shores. I don't think that was on
I can't speak to that, but
I think he was saying it was 50 yards that way somewhere. Yeah, thank you. It does say it, but it's not like that's what we have on the dam.
The initial confusion to me was the first time I went there. I was alone and I was coming from the campground and I saw a sign by that gate. It's not really a gate, it's kind of bars there that prevents cars, and it says keep out. So I thought that meant keep out. And, it seems to me that that's fairly clear, but people have been going across there for years and years and years, so it actually wasn't enforced. So obvious the public has gotten used to going across there, and I don't think there's been any damage. So I think maybe a sign that's a little clearer, that doesn't conflict. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And I've never gotten an answer whether it was people were supposed to not be on there to begin with. We can't seem to find that was determined.
It seems like the sign that's out there is a bit confusing.
And
I'm having a real hard time hearing you, Greg.
The sign that's out there is confusing.
Well, if you read it, but initially, someone who's never been there, I know what you're saying. It is because it does refer to a code that has to do with
It
automobiles.
refers to the vehicle code.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think we should approve option 3 and move forward from that point with the public and with the board and with the appropriate committees.
That's what I agree with, John.
Okay, and I have some comments I'd like to make. I have some comments I would like to make, please.
You did, yes.
Okay. First of all, I'm kind of reminded of the old Woody Guthrie song, "This land is your land, this land is my land." The sign says no trespassing, but on the opposite side it says nothing. Signs, Okay, so Rem told me a story. He was out there and there were young folks on the spillway, and the sign says no diving, and Rem says to the guy, "Look, the sign says no diving." And he says, "Okay," and so he jumps off. This land is your land, this land is my land. What do signs do? Signs really don't do much. They keep honest people honest. They don't really deter much. I'd like to address the threat level issue a little bit. I have a little bit of difficulty with that, and maybe Kian, you can help us here. the threat level that's specified in the board packet is the guarded level, which is the next to lowest level.
I'd actually like to clarify.
And so my question is, maybe that's not the intention, but if it is, then my question is, how often or with what frequency are we at the guarded level? I remember quite clearly that in the aftermath of 9/11, we were at the orange level 100% of the time, and it had no relation to the actual threat level.
Director Wilcox,
Yes.
that series of threat levels that are in the board packet are outdated. Those were outdated as of 2011. There is an updated threat level process and procedure by the Department of Homeland Security now.
And I agree with your concern, because that was my thing, and I'm going, guarded, come on. But then what he said was above the guarded. I kept reading it going, okay, this isn't what I was saying. I wanted it to be at the
Okay, well
upper
then my
level,
question is,
so that it would be rare.
historically, what percentage of the time has the threat level been above guarded?
Well, again.
A question.
I
So,
wanted it
so,
to be the
so
higher, not the bottom.
if we were to adopt that strategy, would we be declaring that the gates would be closed 50% of the time?
See, the proposal, since this is I wanted it to be at like the highest rung. It came out as guarded. I read it, not guarded. I was troubled by it exactly.
And I'm not finished.
The idea being, well, but I'm glad to have it chopped up, and I'll withdraw my, recommend. I don't care. But because I'm a bicyclist too, I wouldn't want to be, arbitrarily having the damn thing closed willy-nilly with it. You're on the other side, and well, damn, it was open an hour ago. So if it was the red, or I was trying to make it so that district could show DSOD we're following some over-regulatory procedure. But yeah, I was troubled as well by the guarded. It just seemed like, even on that one, we could have gone up here to the orange or the red. Point taken, to be sure, I don't care.
Okay, well then I'll continue on. I'm sorry for this. Ken, did you have any information on this?
Yeah, so, excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. So this threat system no longer exists. So the color-coded
Well,
system.
let me set that over here then.
It's not. What exists now is Homeland Security issues detailed bulletins with specific information in them. Yeah.
This was on our desk this morning here.
Okay. So the thought would be that if we receive a bulletin that has specific information targeting dams or other energy-producing infrastructure or a threat in this area, that we would close the gate at that point. So it's not a color-coded system; it's a much more specific system at this point.
We'll have a ton.
And that gives me some reassurance, because looking at this system, the system that was in our board packet, we're looking at potentially closing the Scotts Flat gate because some Uzbeki guy decides to drive his truck down a bike path in lower Manhattan. And some hack politician somewhere decides to up the threat level because of that. And so we're closing Scotts Flat. That doesn't make any sense to me. Or to bring the situation a little closer to home. It means closing the gate at Scotts Flat because some crazy guy decides to shoot up the behavioral health clinic, and the community goes in a general state of lockdown, which has happened once in the last 17 years. That doesn't make any sense either. And there's no nexus between these events.
And that's one of the reasons that Homeland Security did away with this system. And so it's a much more targeted system now, and the closure would be based on specific information received from Homeland Security.
Yeah, I think we should just remove that option. That would be my preference, without belaboring this issue.
When you finish, sir.
And I'm not quite. Thank you. I will call on you when I'm done. Okay, I want to go to the video issue. My question is this: what is the likelihood that we might be required at some point in the future to install video there? I mean, that is a legitimate question. Because if that's the case, if we're ultimately going to be required to put video there, there would be some some reason to do it now, if it's going to be an expense that's required anyway down the road.
I'd say it's likely that we'll be required to put cameras there at some future date. We have cameras at our other facilities, and so this will likely happen.
Are these game cameras?
No, these are.
These are closed-circuit video that would be beamed to the guard shack and back here to the office.
Okay, that opens
Rather
up a
not
new
discuss
option.
exactly where it's monitored, but
Okay, but somewhere, it has to be monitored somewhere by somebody.
If the cameras are there and the cameras are not being monitored or the cameras are being vandalized, then what do? Then something happens and somebody says, well, you weren't watching the camera, look what happened.
And if you're going to monitor them, you're held to that standard. So you damn well better be sure you monitor them. So you almost don't want to monitor them unless you're going to be fully enforceable.
All of these options are still
Your reason not to have
available,
them.
even after you choose option number 3.
Well, I think Will makes a good point, that the fencing that really enhances public safety on the water side of the spillway is already in place. Somebody would have to be slightly nuts to jump off the dry side of the spillway, I think. And he's correct. You know, every bridge presents that same issue, except on a bridge, I mean, the option of jumping off the oncoming traffic side and the outgoing traffic side are really about the same. That's not true in this case.
People tend to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge statistically.
On the upstream side.
Looking at the city.
Looking at
Independent of the flow of water, they're doing it towards the city. It's a statement. 90%. I mean, seriously. There's been studies and everything.
And I agree with that.
I don't know how it affects dams. But that's the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
Forest Hill Bridge, they tend to jump towards Sacramento.
Interesting. But we already have that side fenced. You know, I have to admit, I have some sympathy with the argument that that the gate is inhibiting access to both sides. So I think ultimately, I think the solution is to contribute towards building a trail around the bottom of the facility. And I totally support that. I think ultimately, DSOD and FERC are going to require us to close off this facility, and they're going to require us to put in video monitoring. Would you agree with that, Kian?
I don't want to speculate on the regulatory agencies, but it's certainly a strong possibility that they will
Right.
require that.
And so ultimately, we will probably be required to close the gates permanently and allow access to people via the trail. And so, you know, my personal feeling is that we should participate in building a trail, and that we should look into that sooner rather than later, and provide access that way. You know, we have a right to control our facility, and we have a duty to obey the regulatory agencies. So the public needs to be aware that sooner or later this facility is going to be closed. And then the question is whether or not there's an alternative route. Now, going across the bottom of the dam is not quite as convenient as walking on a level across the top of the dam. Oh well. I mean, the people who have been complaining are bicyclists, and they're out there for exercise, so they can go down and up. That's fine. It's good for them.
Most of it.
Most of them.
Well, Cascade Shore citizens that
Nancy.
just recognize it as fire access and want to be able to walk across. Your point's well taken. Just not entirely correct.
Thank you. The monetary aspect of this staff report was not introduced at the WHO committee, and this sort of thing is usually processed first through the committee. So I don't think today we should really vote on the monetary part. I think we should vote on whether to leave the gates open or not, and whether to form a committee from citizens to help us, for one thing, figure out what are the potential times, most potential times to need guards if the gates are open. And we needed some tentative dates for when that might start. I think we just should vote on whether to leave the gates open or whether to leave them closed. And so I think Will wants to say something.
Oh, no, I was just, no, I was just agreeing.
So I'd like to make a motion that we leave the gates open, that the security measures be developed in committee, perhaps the WHO committee, and that probably should happen in December. Sometimes these meetings get canceled in December, but if not November, December. That the staff still has, this is a long one, the authority to close the gates at any time for any threats. And then, of course, subject to the SOD and FERC requirements.
Second.
Oh, can I add a caveat to that? Perhaps?
Yep, sure.
What about installing the signage? I mean, I think that's something that needs to be clarified.
Yeah, that's
That's option 3.
That's John's point. We can combine options.
It's I mean, as part of the motion.
Well,
Because I
if
think
it goes to committee, that will be one of the items that will be.
I mean, if you're going to leave it open now, I would just think that something needs to be done to make it clear, because it's,
Let's add a phrase that signage needs to be changed immediately.
plus not climbing on the fence, even though you shouldn't have to put a sign like that, but, I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
Can I ask a clarification as to which committee you're referring to? We had indicated the WHO, I mean, the M&R committee in the staff report, but do you think this should be a motion and a discussion with the public in the WHO committee? Just want to make sure.
Well, it's a hydroelectric facility, basically. It's not a recreation facility, so I would think it would go to.
What's in the notes is referring it to who, or not to who, but to M&R.
That's right.
And I would be fine if it lived with M&R.
Okay,
So-
so here are two different.
You're in two different things, right. It needs to reside somewhere. And of course, if we open the gate, then where it resides is not really all that important, and the timeline becomes less critical. And there's time to work this out.
You have a motion and a second. Is there public comment? That's not my meeting, sorry, Nick.
We have a motion and a
We seem
second.
to be at a pause.
Public comment, please. You don't need to raise your hand, just come to the microphone. And state your name for the record, please.
My name is Lisa Kirschbaum. My name is Lisa Kirschbaum. I live in Nevada City. Of course, the main thing is to open the gate, but I also want to say that, yes, this place is a reservoir, but we call it the lake, and it's a place of beauty for us. It's a place our family goes when we're sad. It's a place we go when we're happy. And so whatever signage you put, and the barbed wire needs to go, please. Please just keep it in mind that it's a place that so many people in the community, and not that many, I mean, there's rarely more than 2 people there. So I don't know who did this, because first of all, I know some board members didn't even know that this had happened, that they had put up this gate and barbed wire. I mean, what do you think of when you see barbed wire? It's not very pleasant. So I just would request that whatever the final project is, that you keep in mind the aesthetics a little bit, because it's a peaceful place that a lot of people use in that way.
Matthew Coulter, Nevada County. Can you answer questions in this format, or?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess we can, but,
Yes.
but,
Yes, it's a public meeting.
yeah,
Again, next meeting.
yeah, we can, but
Yes.
your role is not to really act as inquisitor of the board.
Okay, I just had a couple of questions. I hadn't heard anything.
Go
What was
for
the
it.
cost of the current fence that went in?
Fair question.
20?
24,000.
24K? Okay, and then, it's interesting, the city of Grass Valley with their lawyers are removing barbed wire because it's a hazard and a liability, so even around Memorial Park Pool, they've taken down the barbed wire. I'm wondering maybe you could get a new lawyer that would save you guys some money on that account. How many years has the dam been in place with people going across it? What year was it put in?
We kind of reviewed this in the fire discussion. Those gates have been locked for at least 30 years. I
For
forget.
vehicle traffic?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, so your question's a little open-ended
Okay,
there. Yeah,
foot traffic?
it's always been,
Well, the dam was constructed in the mid-1960s.
yeah.
Mid-60s.
It was updated.
So it's been in continual use since the mid-60s.
Rivers seem to flow continually, yes.
Foot
Well,
traffic, yeah.
foot-
Actually, it goes
Yeah,
back to
and forth.
1948.
Okay.
It goes before, you're right.
Yeah, and then it was modified.
There was an old Scots Flat before that.
Are
I
you speaking
believe.
of Lower Scotts Flat or
No?
in the same location? So before the dam was put in, there was access across the valley, basically, the canyon. So then the dam was put in, access continued across there for many years, and now there's a problem with access across there. I guess the case being that so much access has been lost in the community, and there's so many places that you can't get to from here, though you can see them on the other side. And as far as the thing about making a trail down, that's awesome, but a lot of people in the aging community, they're looking for more level ground to walk on around here. So that, and the trail that's already on, the boat ramp, or your guys' side over there on the Harmony Ridge side of the lake, there's a great level trail around there. So to continue to walk across the dam is like a continuation of that trail as far as being level. And I guess part of the problem is you guys need to go out and experience the area and walk that trail, walk across the dam. And like right now is a beautiful day to try it. So I think that would maybe give you a little more insight on the area. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Itara O'Connell. I'm in Grass Valley, and I want to know what a WHO committee is and a M&R committee is.
Fair question. The WHO Committee is the Water and Hydroelectric Operations Committee. The M&R Committee is the Maintenance and Resources Committee. We have 4 standing committees. Those are 2 of them.
Maintenance and resource? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dave White, from Nevada City, and I just...
Can you step up to the mic,
Sorry,
please?
my name's Dave White, live in Nevada City, and I just wanted to lend my support for any way to have access from one side to the other, whether it's visually appealing or is a trail, it's just, that would be great, just for recreation use. That's all, thanks.
All right.
Okay, we do have a motion, I believe, a second? And the motion is, can you read it back?
Director Weber made a motion to leave the gates open, to continue developing a plan under the WHO committee, preferably in November, December, or as soon as possible. Staff would still have the authority to open and close the gates at any time. And they continued on, and I want to confirm that this is part of that motion, that the signage can be changed immediately.
Okay, I would recommend that we change WHO Committee to M&R Committee. I would also recommend that the staff authority be modified or made more specific. Kian mentioned the threat level bulletins that are issued by Homeland Security, and if those threat level bulletins indicate a threat to hydro facilities specifically, the staff certainly have the authority to close the gates in accordance with those bulletins.
So are you amending the motion?
Yes, I am.
I couldn't hear part of it, I'm sorry.
Who?
I don't have a hearing problem.
For clarity, we could break them into separate motions.
We could. Who to M&R and staff authority to basically specify that the staff has the authority to close the gates when Homeland Security threats indicate dangers to hydro facilities.
I could just agree to that amendment, I think, and kind of make it much simpler.
Yeah. Yes, you can essentially withdraw your original motion and restate it.
Yes.
If you're agreeable and your second is agreeable, we can restate it. Chris can do that for you if you like, and take a vote.
I don't see any reason why it can't go through both committees, M&R and who. That make way you're made sure that all the bases are covered.
Are you amending the motion? It's a good idea, John.
I know.
Just say yes, John.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How about you? How's your vote?
Very good.
But we'll let Mr. Hillweld speak.
Good morning, Michael Hillwell, resident of Division 1. I have one question. At the time that the gates are locked, will the signage be changed to advise people that they're locked? Or will they wait until they get up to the gate and then learn that they're locked?
Well, a lot of that's going to depend on the nature and severity of the threat, which would cause the gates to be closed. And I'm sure by then, with 8.5 days notice, that you'll know that there's a threat.
That's a good point, though. I think we could probably commit to hanging a sign on the inside of the gate explaining why the gate is locked during the closure, so that people will come up to the gate and they will see a sign that say Homeland Security threat level is such and such, therefore this gate is locked, so people will know why it's locked.
Thank you.
But that would need also an immediate press release by every avenue possible, so that people don't get out there and then find out that it's closed.
Yes, we can certainly outreach to the community through press releases, our website.
We could make this
Direct
motion
emails.
as long as this takes.
So,
We could make the motion as long as this takes, and if we keep talking.
Run it right straight out the door.
All right.
Okay.
there's
Okay, Sid.
Just one short comment. My name is Sid Brown, Nevada City. I am a question and a preference. I would request that the committees and the board and the staff consider removal of the concertina wire, which is not barbed wire, which is used for animals, but this razor wire, which has been installed, is very prison-like. I hope that either now or in future committee considerations of the details of your motion, that would be on the table as well, to remove that. Thank you.
That'll be discussed in subsequent committee meetings.
Thank you.
So you had two parts to your
That's
comment?
it.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Is this new and interesting information?
Well, I think so. I was impressed with the board's knowledge of the, in your debate about the situation down there with the signage being vague and the signs and the fencing not mitigating any people jumping off on the concrete spillway side. One thing I want to make comment to is the gate. I don't see what locking the gate has to do with national security. I mean, if someone had any intent on destruction of the dam, you could backpack C4 in there or boat in right up to the dam. I mean, the gate is only on one side. So what does this have to do with national security? That was my dilemma.
Can I get your name, sir?
My name's Rick Weaver from Nevada City.
Come on.
Okay. Okay. I think public comment on this
It kind
item
of
is
has to do
closed.
with, sir, it kind of has to do with, we are there's regulators above us. That we don't get to argue the point, we have to do things sometimes. So, right, the true nexus of, does it make a difference? I don't know.
Okay.
People used to drive across Folsom Dam, and that all changed. So you get this federal mindset about things, and we're mandated to do something.
Okay.
Point being,
I believe we
didn't
have a motion and a
to
second.
executives, but- Yeah. We didn't make it up, it's just.
I believe we do have a motion and a second.
No, I didn't.
No,
I hear you.
No, public comment is done.
We're closed to public comment.
Chris,
Motion and
will
second.
you please read the motion back as it currently sits?
So let's, for clarity in the record's sake,
my
let's get a confirmation from the motion and the second that it's withdrawn. We'll have Chris try to summarize what we think your complete thoughts are, and then allow you to say so moved or restate, whatever you like.
Great.
Will that work?
Sure. Can you restate it, Chris?
So Nancy, okay withdrawing your motion, and we'll...
And restating it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the motion that I hear now on the table is to leave the gates open to further develop a plan through the WHO and M&R committees as soon as possible, preferably in the next upcoming meetings. Staff would still have the authority to open and close the gates at any time, dependent upon national threats through that bulletin that we were given today. At which time they would also put a sign up and put out an immediate press release notifying the public. And the signage that, the permanent signage is also to be changed immediately. And that is the motion.
You okay with that, John?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Good, roll call.
What a motion. Roll call, please.
Okay, so we still have, Nancy, you're our first, and John, you're our second?
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Okay.
Here. Division 1,
Aye.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 4.
Aye.
Division 5.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.